Hey, welcome back to another episode of Tie-Dye Talks. Today we got a hot one for you. Okay, it's a really good one. But we're getting together and we're talking, we're chopping it up. And this one's about the ever-changing landscape we're seeing in society with AI. Everybody's talking about AI. Come on now. AI, AI, AI. So we're going to talk about it now too. Andy, over to you. What are we talking about today?
Yeah. So again, a deep topic, as you just said, Paul, AI versus humanity. And I love this topic because my name is Andy. So AI stands for Andy's intelligence. So that's just so we put it out there.
You know what they say though, right? Intelligence is pretty dumb. Garbage in,
Someone,
garbage out.
someone told me that, so I'm just running with it. I didn't say it, but
Yo.
AI, artificial intelligence versus humanity. Um, for me, Paul, as we talked about, Paul and Tiffany, before we get into these complex topics, we need to define it. And AI, it is a hot one. Everybody's talking about it, but it's an ever-changing topic as far as even the AI conversation. Now, the more I did a little bit of research on AI, is the more I realized AI has been around for a while. It's just now become front and center as though it's brand new technology, but it's been around. And what I find interesting though, and I'll kind of set the stage for our conversations, is there's 7 levels now of how they're trying to express different levels of AI and the technology and where we want to go as a society. So in doing some research, the first level of AI, they call it, reactive machines when it started years ago. And Paul, you're the technologist, you're the true technologist in our team, so you can probably give us real history on that. But they call it reactive machines, and we can define what those are. And then they call it, learning memory, and then or limited memory, sorry, where they started using the memory along with the learning process. And then they went to the theory of mind. That's pretty deep because that's to me where it starts overlapping into our behavior and the way we really think. And then they went into the next level they really want to take this thing is self-awareness. That is where I get really concerned. And then in terms of the technologists, they generalize them into 3 categories, right? Artificial general intelligence, no, sorry, artificial narrow intelligence, like beginning level, still very, very smart, then general intelligence,
Yeah.
and then super intelligence. So you'll see a lot of ANI, let's call that level 1, where it's on our level. Maybe it's even beyond our level already. I don't really know. Then you'll have AGI, that's definitely above our level. And then the ASI, I don't even know why we want to go there because, I mean, when you get to that artificial super intelligence, man, I don't know how we control something that is so much more smarter than we are as an entity. So, with that, um, Tiffany, I'll let you. Your generation is going to be AI is in your generation and the younger generation. I mean, they're growing up in it, the younger ones now beyond you guys. Your thoughts on this whole AI conversation?
So I think the general use of AI is rapidly advancing. It used to be that ChatGPT for me was the first thing that I heard of, really, that was like this new age thing. However, now you go on a search engine and AI is there. It's starting to be everywhere. I can plan a whole trip with ChatGPT and not even really use a lot of my brain power for it. So I think that there's some pros. I think there's cons, obviously. But I think that it's also speaking to the fact that we're in a state of a short-term culture. Everything that we need in this culture is a quick fix society. That's kind of where we're at. And basically, I mean, for me, AI is just using a machine to just automate a task that would be otherwise performed by a human. So how far we want to take it is where it gets a little bit tricky. So for me personally, I use AI just for chat GPT mostly. I think I mainly use it to generate emails because I am someone who I take forever to type out an email because I panic so much about how the other person will receive it. So that's as far as I have delved into the world of AI personally. I've read on it, but like as far as using it, chat GPT for an email is about, or generating an idea, and then me basically making that better because mind you, it's not me. It's just using data that a human gave it, so I can make it better. You know, I am the human in this. So I'm not sure how are you guys using AI currently, if at all?
Well, it's a very interesting question. I think for me, I'm still in the experimental phase. I'm still finding out how to use it, where it can be used, what can be used. Some people just dive in and just using it right away. It's back to the think it, do it, right? Are you doing it right away? I'm in a bit of the mix whereby I'm still thinking about how to use it, but using it in art, using it in creation of my everyday, things that I do when it comes to media, as well as in writing. Looking at it in terms of searching. There's a new search engine out right now called Perplexity AI, and they're going to try and displace Google from being a #1 search, but they're changing the way search in of itself is performed. See, a company came along and said, hey, through user interface and through interface design and intelligent design, et cetera, it said, this is the way we're going to search now. We typically throw a query into a page, and it spits back a bunch of links and a bunch of things you can find further. So it narrows your focus for you. It doesn't provide you really an answer, right? Whereas now you're seeing with these, that's the difference with chat models, is you're having a conversation with a bot that's going out and finding those links for you now, but providing an answer. So, that's going to change too, how we interact going forward in the future. I think it's a whole revolution right now in terms of changing how we have done things. People get comfortable with something, comfortable with the technology and the way of doing things, and something comes along to disrupt that. So we're in a disruption phase right now. So I think it's gonna be interesting to see where everything goes. But right now, I think it's in the very early stages. And what's interesting now, you can't really settle on one particular way of doing things, is because AI is changing things so rapidly. Just look over the last year, and that's because I think we're in the end of an exponential growth phase, whereby you're seeing things grow by leaps and bounds in just 1 and 2 year periods of time versus a 5 or 6 year ramp up towards whatever that technology is going towards. Like Andy said, AI is not brand new. It's been here for how long? We have the Amazon Go stores where you walk in and you take something off the shelf, it automatically knows to check you. You have some places whereby you walk in, it scans your face and it knows who you are, and it can automatically debit your credit card. All these futuristic movies we've seen about these Orwellian futures or the Matrix or whatever else, it's kind of here now. What do you think about that, Andy?
Well, let's drill down on the topic. We could talk about first, maybe we can settle on, do we think it's beneficial or not? AI versus humanity, right? Pros and cons. But then I want to look at the impact it's having, right? Like maybe let's drill down on education, because my thing is this. When you don't use something, anything in the body, it's going to atrophy, right? If you stop using this brain that we bless with as being critical thinkers to solve problems, and everything is being solved for you. We had this conversation last time about, going to college and your parents paying for it versus you paying for it. So let's use the same analogy. If we use an AI to do everything, right? ChatGPT became the branded version, but every major tech company have an AI, and there's so many levels. I know what I love about Paul's use of AI as a creative is that, okay, things that took me 5 days, Andy, within minutes. He's an artist, right? He's a creator. Creators love technology. And you're using it in a pure form, Paul, to empower, to enhance, to complement creativity. But when we're dealing with the AI level of making them human-like in its behavior and its thought process, why are we doing that? And how does that impact the young ones, the little 4 and 5 year olds entering into the education system? What's their learning process going to look like? Those are the questions I have about this discussion today.
Yeah, they're great questions. I think the toughest part is, why are we doing that? Well, we're doing that to provide services. The whole idea of being a civilized society, if you're looking at, I guess, again, these futures, Star Trek, whatever, so we don't have to waste our time making money on these things. We can follow pursuits of our desires, hearts, and dreams, which spiritually and religiously people warn about as well, that's a future whereby you can just think up something or just desire, dream something, and it's there for you. That's my concern for the next generation and how that's being used, because it can be used for good or it can be used for negative, right? The fact that you don't have to teach somebody, something else can teach somebody. But back to your point, is that the right way to go? Should we be doing that? I don't know. That's the question we have to answer. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
So Tiffany, jump in, please.
Yes, I'm
You
too.
talked about the pros and cons, and then I'm looking at you have young, I know you're young, beautiful daughters, and as a concerned mom, you and Joe as parents, I mean, we immediately start thinking about our kids once we become parents, right? And how they're going to
Yes.
be affected. So with that said, we have two grandsons that are 2 and just over the age of 2. So this has been, yeah, concerned about my kids, but I think they're not growing up in it. They went through sort of still almost a traditional like education system. It was changing. They were using Google and YouTube and things like, but now we're going to another level. I'm just concerned about how it impacts learning, how it impacts thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that things are always changing, right? And one thing that I think is how are we adapting to these changes individually and as a whole? So is society as a whole catching up to these advancements and trying to like truly enhance the systems around it, such as education? We're still doing education in a way that we've done it with trying to get these kids to put their head in a book. And sometimes things need to start catching up as well. I think that what this may possibly do, or my hopes for it, is that this allows society to look at the systems that are in place and say, okay, this isn't working anymore. How can we change this? We can't keep doing these things. You can't give a kid an assignment and then be mad when they use their resources, because technically that's what it is. It's a resource. You have to make that resource a tool for them. So how can we do that as a society? I'm not in any position of power in the sense of like a system. I am a drop in the ocean, but that drop creates a ripple effect. And so that has that outreach. So I think that looking at it as, from changing our mindset from, is this a problem or is this potential? How can we contribute to this advancement that is happening in our society? And that also applies to the job force as well.
So I think Tiffany been saying this, Paul. It's time for smart schools. We have smart everything except smart
100%.
schools. We got smart everything, and nobody's really said, let's create smart schools. Yeah, Paul. I mean, I think that's what she's been resonating with this whole, the way the system is, the antiquated learning system that really doesn't work. It didn't even work in the past, to be honest, because, if you didn't go back and read and really, really study on your own many times, you weren't successful in a class. It's not just the engagement part. It had to be you learning, you actively pursuing the information. And with this new world of quick, I have kids who want to just PowerPoint. Just give me the PowerPoint with slide. They don't want to read. And then how is that impacting learning? And maybe, with this AI, Paul, as a technologist, as a guy who's using it now, with your craft, with your graphic skills and graphic design, do you have an idea of how that can be implemented as an educator to create more interaction and learning?
I think it can. There's lots of things going on in this space right now. And the thing is, it's evolving so fast. So even to settle to say that, we should go this way or that way, I don't even know if that's the answer right now. Like I said, I'm still in the exploratory phase of the technology is so new in its application. Not that it's new in its development or having it around, just in getting in front of the public and the public using it. And what's interesting to me is how it's been applied. There's right now a fight inside the AI space of open source and public sharing versus corporate and making money, right? And that's the balance they're having. That's the fight even OpenAI has as to why they ousted the CEO when he came back again, right? Like you're still forced to make money. We live within a capitalistic society, but at the end of the day, are we going to make sure that this technology is democratized for all? So all people have access equally. All people have access towards using these tools. We're not seeing that already. Already there's the technology is being used in certain ways to benefit those, the haves and the have-nots, but it's not cheap. It's very, very expensive, the amount of computing power that's needed. So again, we know at the end of the day, education is always the last place that use these things. Unfortunately, we don't want to talk about it, but what drives a lot of industries forward is the underground, the black markets, the seedy places. People find new uses you never thought of before and other ways to make money or to exploit, right? We know how much pornography drives these different industries of technology and stuff forward. And we're seeing it there again. When you had all these different artistic models whereby they had all these safeguards they put in place, people found ways around the safeguard and said, who are you to limit my creativity? The problem is not the technology. Once again, it's how we use it and who's using it and what you're using it for. So I do commend the fact that there's lots of people looking at the space, and I do I love the fact that a lot of people have come about on the open source front towards communal development and communal usage. I wouldn't have learned what I learned right now, wouldn't be kind of able to manipulate these tools in such a fast pace if it wasn't for these these open source kind of mentality. Now it's funny because that goes against the way people learn in school. A lot of people nowadays are self-taught. And if it wasn't for YouTube as a tool, they wouldn't even learn. Right now, YouTube is the default de facto standard. But as you were saying too, Andy, when is something going to come along to even topple YouTube? Because YouTube has become that faceless corporate entity that makes decision based on people's lives, can raise people up to be something as great as an industry leader for like a subject thought leader, or can destroy them within one day. Lots of channels have disappeared like that. They decided it was something against their terms and they were gone. So again, can you use technology in a way that magnifies your brand and your voice, and gives you a voice to people, and you make sure that it can't be taken away from you, right? That's the interesting part I'm looking at for use of technology, being able to democratize and have people have a voice. And then if we're looking at education, I think education has lots of opportunities, not, as you were saying, Andy, under the old realm of going and sitting in a classroom, having a teacher lecture, or even right now, the distance learning model, here's some stuff online, you got to learn this way. We're going to dump a bunch of courses on you. You got to work through it yourself, got to do a bunch of, community discussion board exercises, and then you get a test at the end of it to see whether you've learned something or not. Is that the model? I don't think so, right? It's changing and it's so rapid. So I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts around, even from a construct perspective, Andy. How do we go about now maybe leveraging it just from a different construct perspective?
Well, I'm a retired biology professor. I wasn't planning to go right in the classroom, but you pulled me in. You pulled me in with that question. But you said something though that triggered a joke I heard, or a definition of a hypocrite. I heard one of the great speakers of all time said, you know what the definition of a hypocrite is? Someone who's complaining about the amount of pornography on their VCR. Yeah, because you don't want playing that. It's not a television station. But the learning process is an interesting one. What I learned from being a teacher is that the more you teach is the more you learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe, to Tiffany's point and to your question, the future of smart school should be interactive, where the students are put in a position to become subject matter expert. Go ahead and teach this. Go ahead and explain this. Go ahead and use this. Yeah, much more investment in the understanding process when you have to say something to somebody or explain something to somebody. It's the quickest way to learn. And this passive way of just receiving information and thinking you're going to absorb it is not the way to learn. So maybe with AI, right? Now we have that. AI is doing that, right, Paul? It's an interactive system with you giving it stuff and it giving you back stuff. So maybe we should start looking at how the levels of student learning with AI interaction, because you're right, Tiffany. The only thing that's constant is change. So we can sit here and say, oh man, AI is destroying humanity. It's here and it's here to stay, and it's going to have an impact. How do we make that beneficial for society instead of just complaining about the dangers of it, the worries of it? I think that's the approach you seem to always take, Paul, is look at the positive, and we know what we want to use it for, and let's be the ones to crusade on the power and the positives from the technology instead of the fear factor of how it can harm us, because it's a battle. And Tiffany, going back to, you're not just a little ripple, right? Remember, you have the ability to go become whatever you want still. So, I think having that, I hear you say it over and over, even going back to your mom want to be a principal. I think some sort of administrator to change education is in your future. You have a real passion. No, I'm serious. It's something.
No, my mom said that. My mom had said the same thing. That's why I'm laughing, because she wants me to go and be in admin, because she's like, that's like where you need to be. So I think that's funny. So
no,
now you got wheels turning.
It's coming out to you. It's your pet peeve, and it's an important job. We got to pick up we can't just be talking about it, because I don't see what's really being done about it, Tiffany. Let's be honest. Like, it's just getting, we talk about it, even the online learning platform, people are just sending stuff online and hoping kids learn. So what do kids do? They just Google the answers. The learning process is just out the window, I think. It's just information gathering night. We're in the information gathering stage with who understands how to use technology the best. But how can we make the critical thinking be a part of that to keep the brain learning, to keep the brain active?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that something to, I guess, think through is basically the whole, I think one of the main purposes of AI is basically for us to get some time back, if we look at it like that, right? We're making longer processes shorter, but how are we using that time that we get back? Is it to learn a new skill? And in school, where I remember when we had to do a project, we'd have like a day for research. We don't need that anymore. You could say, okay, first 15 minutes, gather all your stuff that you need. And now you have the rest of class to use for whatever else you need. And so I think that that's where those like little changes need to come in. And then I think that now we're kind of in this space where mental health awareness is now a thing. And I say a thing as in like the popularity and the awareness of it is rising, and it's becoming normalized as well as it should. I think that soft skills are also really coming into play right now as something that's really valuable, as well as those skills that you learn within a trade or within, education. So I think that maybe possibly do we start to implement that further and more effectively, because I've seen it thrown in schools, but do we start to implement the use of soft skills more, because that's really where humans thrive, is those skills. Like that's what we have over AI in that sense.
Yeah, but Tiffany, real quick, Paul, Tiffany, what do we do at that time? They're going to spend more time on social media, unfortunately.
Well, yeah.
That's what's
But
going
that's the
on.
thing. You have a choice, though. You have a choice. Either you could sit there and you could learn a new skill, because right now we're in the other thing is that we went from limited information to information overload really quickly. So I think that learning how to, do kids even know how to find an accurate source? Like focus on that. ChatGPT and all these things. Yeah, they wrote you a paper, but where are these sources coming from? I used to hate when the teacher said cite your sources, because it was a pain in the butt. But now it's like, okay, you have all this information, but where is it really coming from?
So are we in the age of plagiarism then? Is that what's going on, guys? Is that plagiarism an extinct rule, Paul? It doesn't matter no more? I mean,
Well, you're going to get stuff from nothing is new under the sun. Everything is plagiarized, right? Plagiarism in of itself. The issue is though is, are you citing and saying where you got your idea from, because it wasn't an original idea, right? It goes back to experiential learning, like you were saying. I think that these tools are to help us learn better, learn faster, learn quicker, learn different ways, right? But through experience. I think for me, people learn different ways. We look at the Vox scale, visual, audio, kinesthetic, and being engaged in those different processes and those different ways of learning. I think that's where now you can use AI to connect with you. Like for me, what I'm interested in right now is theoretically, I could create a course on whatever topic, doesn't matter what the heck it is. And then I could take my own voice, my own picture, right? Submit my picture and my voice to the AI, give it the topic that I want it to be an expert on, right? It will go out and write that topic, come back and have me say it and teach it as though it's me. You can do that right now. It takes a lot of time, but right now I can do that with my own voice, my own training. It's just called training a model. You have to train it to understand what you sound like, your inflections, how you speak, your nuances, right? How you write, what your inflections are, what your nuances. That's all. Behaviors are all patterns, how we pattern ourselves. But it's the experience. So the learning comes from the experience somebody has, but to have no experiences or want to rush through the experiences, that's where you're robbed of the learning, right? Students get robbed of the learning because they don't want to experience stuff. They just want to get the grade. They just want to get the paper. Why? Because they don't really care about the learning. They want to get what the end result is. And that's because we also live in this microwave instant generation whereby things have to happen now. And that's the backlash you're having in the art world, because they're saying artists have spent their whole life and learning about lighting, about foreground, background, midground, about perspective, about human body, about storytelling, about placement, all these things that really enhance your knowledge. So for me, it's funny because I took a lot of those courses. I had an old friend of mine who's a mentor and who was one of the old artists from Marvel Comics, and he ushered in kind of the initial early days of a lot of Black artists working in the industry back in the 70s in Marvel Comics. His name is Arvell Jones. And the stuff I learned from him, even though I was taking illustration and comic book courses and trying to learn to be an illustrator, it wasn't the path I ended up in. I ended up in graphic arts and website design and whatnot for a number of various reasons, more family related at the time. But those skill sets that he taught me, I still use today in design, right? So it's the principles of lighting and principles of what kind of lighting and, you know, what kind of angles and telling a story and understanding storytelling and being able to communicate information. I use that even now in the classes that I teach students on presentation theory, right? The differences behind what makes a presentation good, what makes an image good, that why do people find an image interesting, right? What makes something exciting? So that's where now I think AI can help teach people and can interact, because now you had to go and experience those things by searching it all and finding it myself. So that's part of the experience. Now AI will just tell it to you. But if you have an experience with it and you're asked to then work back and have a relationship with that experience, I think that's valuable for the learning. Now you're not wasting time on searching stuff out. You know, you're actually doing it and you're learning more about it. So again, it comes down to how these tools are used. And what's really fascinating for me is I'm seeing all kinds of applications. This brand new website just launched where the guy is allowing people to take their own scripts that they're writing with the software, and you could drop it into an app and you can build an app. So people are now building point solution apps to be able to generate images for what they need, right? So it's going to cut down the time someone would have to do something. And a lot of times this is driven by, you got a boss telling you got to meet a deadline. You got to get something done, right? Now, if I can get that done in a quarter of the time or an eighth of the time, why wouldn't I do it? Because back to the point, right? This is application. I have more time now to do other things in the job. What's going to happen though? The boss is just going to give me more work. That's what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, well, you know, there's a lot of things you said there that has triggered a lot of things in my mind about this whole AI revolution, right? And looking at this life, I want to defend the students for a second, Paul. As an educator, as guys in the system, Tiffany's also been there. Isn't the system at fault for the students not wanting to learn? Because they don't.
Absolutely.
Systems aren't asking you to know if you learn anymore. They're asking you to pass a test, right? It's really a very deep thing. I myself had to sort of guide students into, listen, this is about passing the test. Because they came, I studied 8 hours for your course and you know, I failed. What happened? I'm always been, I said, biology is first of all a different type of subject, right? And for me, you know, it's technical. So I'm simplifying it by giving you a review sheet. Don't go and do flashcards and this and this and this and this and this. There's a disconnect. There's passing the test. Like all these doctors and every single institution with professions have a standardized test. That ain't about learning. That's about passing. You study to pass the test. So if we keep pushing this, even with all the CEU courses, I joke with my wife all the time as a PT or any certification, are you really, do they care if you learn? They give you a content, they give you so much information that you have to go through for this limited time, and then you have to take a quiz at the end or pass the test at the end, because their whole thing is you pass. You can try to learn, but it can compromise test taking and passing a test. You understand what I'm saying? So we live in a society today, is I believe, Paul, the skills that you said you got from your mentor is how we have to, and Tiffany, maybe the system needs to show line up your passion with the learning process. Because if it's something you really want to do, you really want to learn. I think it starts there, right? If I want to do this, I'm going to be invested in learning how to do it. If I don't care about this, I don't want to learn that material. It doesn't interest me. Even the book reading process, we all read, but what do you like to read? Some people like romance, some people like mystery, some people like, you know, psychology books. We all have our different interests, but whatever those interests are, we invested in learning, we invested in reading and studying, and we love doing it. So, you know, it's like the Montessori school systems, and I hear about all the different educational systems where, yo, pull the kids into their area of passion and gifting, what they like to do, and then apply the learning process to it, as opposed to a one-size-fits-all. I see Tiff kind of reacting to a lot of things I'm saying, so I'm going to throw it to you. Is that our solution? Is that where we should go with the technology? Because the gap is going to widen if we don't address it. I won't say that. You know, the gap is going to widen, especially in the developed countries, or less developed countries, sorry, that they don't have the technology. The teachers are so, and this AI stuff is not for me, just like how they reacted to online learning. And so therefore, they're not going to be invested in helping the kids get it. What's going to happen to those kids in school?
Yeah, I think accessibility is a huge piece of this, because even I was actually just yesterday looking into a Montessori school, and a big part of it is the accessibility of it. I personally may be able to afford it. However, then do I limit my child also? Because a big part of, so originally I'm from South Florida, and when me and my family moved to Indiana, my main concern was diversity. So placing my child in a school that's almost elitist and not accessible to everyone, how does that affect their outcome? Do I then take it upon myself as a parent to help my children learn application? Because I think honestly, where the success of the future lies is within the application. I can give you all the tools, but can you apply it? Because you can take your certification and you can pass your certification and you can have your little name on a piece of paper, but if you cannot go out there and successfully apply that, you're just as good as that piece of paper.
Yeah, that's well said. It reminds me of something I was just told by a technologist, Paul, a blockchain expert. He said, my view is if you think like a robot, then you should be extinct by a robot. That's like, whoa, that's a profound statement, yeah? But maybe he has a point. You said earlier, Paul, it gives us the chance to go do what we really want to do. Some of these jobs that have been eliminated maybe wasn't your dream job anyway. So can you now put yourself in a path of what you really want a purposeful life to be like? But really, when it comes to paying the bills and finding the purpose and all that, Paul, it's easier said than done, I think.
And that's a big part of it, right? At the end of the day, though, education was built on a colonial system that was meant for, mass production. That's not even the way. There's different ways of looking at stuff. There's, we talked about experiential learning. There's indigenous ways of knowing indigeneity, right? That's coming on the forefront a lot in Canada now. And it's funny you said, because all the assessment pieces we've moved towards now, we're getting rid of testing. No tests at all whatsoever. It's an experience. The exams have to be testing you on an experience of what you have gone through, but also how do you apply the learning? I tell my students all the time, okay, I give you a topic or I give you something to talk about, even in soccer, right? I say to the kids, we'll give you a topic or something to learn on. Why would you not use that? Because you get comfortable in what you're always going to do. So if I'm asking you in an activity, I don't like to say drill because you're not drilling them, but an activity, we're learning to do something, and then we go into the game part of it and you go do something different. Well, what are you doing? I gave you something to try and learn. Why don't you go and experience it now so that you can figure out how it's successful, how you fail at it, so then you can solve a problem, because life's about solving problems. The technology is there to help us solve problems faster. And like anything else, the faster you solve a problem, the easier you're able to understand it, the better it's going to be for you in general. The problem we have now, though, is that's not how I want to test you. At the end of the day, in soccer, right? It's how many teams score the most goal wins the game. It's not how many man you dribble, but there's some places to be looking at. Well, I dribbled 5 man today. I got how much pile and nutmeg and beat down a man and rainbow, and I'm happy. But you still lose the game for nothing, right? So again, there's this discussion over how people are learning and what's the best way then also to verify that learning, verify that testing of the person. And I don't think it's by the methods we've had in the past, because once again, they are tied specifically to a certain mindset, which is a Eurocentric colonial mindset. And now I think what's really cool about AI, again, if it can be truly democratized, is that different ways of knowing and people, again, coming together and sharing their experiences in an open forum allows people to learn and do things in different ways. But that's being challenged because, again, they have to make money. Capitalism is showing its head at the end of the day as part of it. So to me, experiential learning is a big part of it, Andy. I really think that's how I've learned personally for myself. A lot of things I can really, no matter what I went through, whether it was even being a testing or whatever have you, it's the experiences that really got me to be able to understand something. So I can't say enough about experiential learning and also testings.
But you open a door, and AI and humanity we discussed in the day. And I've been, maybe the default because of the career path, we kind of drilled on education impact. But you just opened the sports door, something that is very passionate to me, to Tiffany. We all soccer players, and you say even soccer. So I'm going to ask this question then, because I'm seeing it. I'm seeing them showing you an Android dribbling the ball, shooting upper 90s. Now, are people going to want to watch a bunch of androids playing instead of people because their skill level, their ability to do the things that we love in the game, they can execute better than you? I mean, what's going to happen there, guys? What are we What are we doing even in sports? Stephanie's shaking her head. What's going on there, Tiff? Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's already happening. It's already happening. Video
All
games,
right,
buddy.
so what's
Video
that?
games.
What are we doing with that one?
I think that at least growing up, the passion, you cannot have a machine replicate the passion of a game. That feeling that another human being will give you. When you look and that camera pans to the stands and you see that emotion in the stands, you can't have robots replicate that. And I think that something that was sparked is that I think that artificial intelligence will eventually almost help make us more human in the sense that we will have to dig deep into our, like, what makes us human. You know, I think that that's the piece that we really need to deal with as well is, you know, the jobs they'll start to dwindle down a little bit, but that will force us to really think about what we want to do further on. That will force us to think, okay, what can I add to this? You have to look within to really advance and apply.
I think
I'm
Paul
gonna have to come back at. Yeah, I'm gonna come
I
back at it.
know, I
I'm
can
come back at it.
tell.
I'm
Go
come back
ahead.
at it. You know what? E-gaming for the longest time, old folks like me said, "What are you doing playing a video game, man? You haven't make any money on that. No one finds that interesting." And then I saw my son with 20,000 followers, 20,000 followers playing a stupid video game, talking about how he's doing this and doing that. Then next, 30,000 followers, 30,000 people watching you talk about a stupid video game. What are you talking about here? You know what I'm saying? So I had to learn the hard way too. Like, oh wow, people are following that. And then look at e-gaming. They said for a long time that people will never get paid for e-gaming, and now you can't talk enough. They're making just as much. People who sit down all day long and get good at actually controlling a video game. What I see happening is not just only the AI being autonomous, but imagine now you playing the soccer game. Me and you, Andy, I got my 12 Androids. You got your 12 Androids.
That's
you
what
got
I'm saying.
It's my team, and I'm controlling my team. But I still agree with you, Tip. There has to be some human interaction. Just let the robots play, and we're just watching that. I mean, that's just me. Hey, man, it might change. But I think if you're controlling it, you're a part of it. And they want to see which coach. This coach got really good because he's the guy that could control the robots, and his robot always does the bicycle kick. People love to celebrate people and celebrate people who can do kind of crazy things, right? So I think as long as there's some sort of human interaction around it, you see this stuff in the early days of robo boxing, right? Remember we used to see the boxers box against each other. Now, you saw animes around robo soccer. Now it's here, Andy. So who knows? Maybe the e-gamers would be in the whole new industry of robo soccer. We're gonna call it robo soccer. That's what it is, right?
Yeah, well, you see, because back in the day, and you talked about it in your statistic about who's gonna make it a pro. Now we understand there are more fans than actual professionals in every sport. But the fans have we've involved them through the gaming process. And that blinding paradigm needs to be looked at because it is taking steam. And you have to remember, guys, decision makers are based on who are the thought leaders or who are the ones leading that generation, right? So if the generation, Tiffany, that's coming up is a generation of more dominant gamers and actual players, the gamers are going to push it towards what they love, like Paul is saying. And what you just said, the purists like us will be the minority, and then they can't control the narrative of where this thing is going to go. I'll give you a perfect example. One of the biggest coaching organizations right now in the US, the United Soccer Coaches. They won the first. The United Soccer USSF was the first. But their methodology was you have to be a player to be a coach. You have to be a former player at some level, and the higher the level, the more access to go into the highest level badge. So you played pro, you can go do your A. You played college, you can go do your B. You played high school, you can go do your C. But you have to be a player. Because this is a business model, Tiffany and Paul, the United Soccer Coaches said, you know what? We're going to say everybody can be a coach because our goal is the net. Everybody can be a coach. It doesn't matter if you played or not. And so now they're the biggest coaching organization in the US. So it's the same thing with sports, right? I mean, it's a business model. And some companies may not want to fire their employees. They want to give them, retirement and the benefits, but their competitor just used a bunch of robots and androids and displays. And so they cut down on their overhead by $20 million. And now you got to compete with them. What do you do? So we're dealing with an evolution here, and I'm just watching this thing in even sports being disrupted. Now, it may not happen in our generation, but why are we even opening that door towards that? Because I guess we just creative. And so going back to Paul's point and my point, you use the word experiential. I always say we have to guard the critical thinking skills, the mind. We have to guard the ability to think no matter what we do. Because you said application is the key, Tiffany. You can't apply something if you can't think. If you can't figure things out, there's no application. You will become, and I don't even want to insult you by saying robots. Robots are smart. As a matter of fact, my wife always said, what is this thing when they say, are you a robot? They're testing you. Robots ain't going to get that wrong. Robots would put a comma, asterisk, the machine. So to say we want to know if you're human and they give us these little tests on the computer to see if you're a robot or not, doesn't really make sense because the robots today aren't just a machine with no brain. We're infusing a thinking process, a central processing unit within that physical machinery, and they're thinking and they're doing and they're modeling. And the one thing I want to say as we look at the end of this talk today is AI versus humanity. The subtopic was, where is this all going? My thing is, as we look at the solutions to this discussion today is, how do we safeguard our ability to think and not let something think every single thing for us? Convenience, right? We all like convenience, no problem. But to what degree do we continue? Let's look at our own individual lives. How much do you think you would like the AI to impact and you keep control of this aspect of what you're doing? We'll start with you, Tim.
Go ahead.
I think, yeah, there's limits. I personally, like I said, I'm not very into all the AI. I think that when I do use it, it is for ease of use. So really and truly, I use it for what it was intended for. But I think that there are certain people that want to keep pushing that limit and see how much of their lives they could potentially automate. However, I also grew up in that era where all those sci-fi movies came out about why we should not be going here. And so I personally am like, absolutely not, get that away from me. And I mean, even there was the Smart House on Disney Channel where the house ended up like taking over and like capturing the family. Like I have, like Google and Alexa, but even then I'm like, I only use them for music, like as a speaker. So then I'm like, why do I even have you? I should just buy a regular speaker, but yeah, I think there's people who have, you have the smart switches, the smart thermostat, your whole house just like knows when you're there, when you're not, which is kind of creepy because is anybody really reading those terms and conditions? How much do they get access to your stuff? So yeah, and that goes back to the talk we had the other day about who's really paying attention to what these companies are taking from us. There's been episodes about, people who will just click on, continue or I accept. And it's like, when you think, oh, well, you can't do that. And it's like, oh, yeah, they can because you said you accept and you didn't actually read it. Because let's be real, no one actually reads terms and conditions. So yeah, I don't necessarily like trying to force it into every crevice of my life. I want to use it as a tool and I want it to be more AI and humanity rather than us going against each other and as in a battle state. So
wow, well said. Paul, I know you wanted to jump in just now. I hope you have your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, humanity is what? Is our interaction, is our living, is our way of doing things, right? And having something take over some of those things, it comes down to what's your perspective. And we can't assume all people are the same and they all expect the same. At the end of the day, there are lots of people who are mindless and they don't really care and they just want to go about their life. There are those who are going to be intellectual thinkers and who want to know and experiment and change. The problem is that people in control of these systems, what are they doing with it? I mean, we have a big scare about a lot of things because it's what are they doing with that? Right? What is going to happen to humanity, meaning our interactions of human beings and how we learn and how we relate to one another? We don't know, right? Again, people who are bad-minded, as we say, bad minds always be bad mind, right? You can't change people who are bad-minded. The problem, though, is that if the technology takes off and the technology is bad mind, you can't control it. It's all about control, right? So for me, I don't really worry too much about those crazy futures that we hear about, think about. I think humanity will always survive. Humanity will always persist because there are always going to be that 1% of people who do want to see, deep thought and who do pontificate on the meaning of life and a better way of being and whatnot. So you know, as long as the remnant survives, it still survives. I think there's a difference though when you're talking the masses and how the masses interact and how, you know, overall the society relates to that technology. And people are doing things always for the betterment of a bigger group of people, right? There's always small groups who will do whatever they feel and what they must for themselves. So back to the main point of discussion of humanity versus AI. I think that as long as humanity can control the AI, that's the issue. It's one of control. When you lose control, which is, you know, every major sci-fi movie, that's the premise of it. When the AI takes over, right? When the AI decides that it's in control, you know, Terminator, you know, Matrix, what's these kind of movies we all see the same thing. You know, even the Marvel movies, the MCU with Ultron, you know, this thing taking over and making a better version of society and humanity than we can make ourselves. As soon as we get out of ourselves and we've lost control, that's the problem. And that's why they're kind of scared, as you were saying, Andy, of even just AGI, artificial general intelligence, right? Is it going to be smarter than us and does it have the potential for us to lose control? Never mind advanced, post AGI, right? I think the next step, past ASI,
artificial super, yeah.
artificial super intelligence. So we're heading down that road regardless, whether we like it or not. You can't stop it. People will talk all what they want about stopping it. You can't put the genie back in the bottle once the bottle's been opened. The question is which way you direct the genie, what do you allow to happen with the genie, right?
Make sure you use the right 3 wishes, huh? But
Yeah,
but
exactly.
but here's the thing. Here's the thing. For me, as we close, I would say, this whole thing with AI versus humanity, Tiffany framed it well, in terms of her life. I say from a solution standpoint, we keep things that we can still do and cherish the ability to do it and not feel like you should not feel like AI. I mean, what do you do then if something is doing everything for you? Then you have no purpose. You know,
Yes.
the aging process is always where we discard people because physically they've aged, but they're still sharp in the mind, and we act like there's no more purpose for them and they get discarded. And that's a tough place to be when you talk to the elderly and they're very lonely and there's life left, and every day there is nothing other than what? Sit in a chair, watch TV. That is not a purpose for life for someone who has intellect, who wants to have a conversation, who have stories to share. You know what I mean? And so to me, if we don't safeguard the ability to do stuff for ourselves, thinking, oh, it's better to use AI, it's better to use AI, it's better to use AI, you're gonna show up one day realizing there's nothing you know how to do, right? Whether it's you can't find directions because it's all GPS dependent, or you can't think because you don't know how to do something, how to apply it. So the caution for me would be, let's not be so gung-ho about the power of technology in every single place of our life, understanding that the people behind the scenes may have power, good intent, and bad intent, and be able to discern the best you can which one you see is coming at you with not a powerful intent or positive intent to empower, and don't embrace it just like that. Don't just blindly embrace and think it's all for good. You know what I mean? That would be my thing about it, because we can't deny that technology is important and we need it and society advances with it. But let's not be so gung-ho about everything they tell us. Let's not be so gullible that, hey, this is all for good. Because there is a measure of control going on. And one thing I would say, Tiffany brought up something again. So our first daughter wrote she had a talk, and the topic of the talk was, does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? And she grew up, wanting to be a movie star, dancer, actress, song like your daughter as well, Paul. We definitely need to make them meet. She's very creative. But I would say this, pay attention to the movies. They actually forecasting what some of these behind the scenes disruptive thinkers are about. COVID was shown to us before COVID came.
Yep.
So it's no more sci-fi. There's no more sci-fi. There's reality coming with technology. Sci-fi, we thought it was sci-fi when we were growing up. Now you see, wait a minute, we thought that was things of science fiction, and it's become implemented in society. So I think we have to be smart enough to realize they're forecasting certain things to sensitize you, or desensitize you before it's rolled out. And we got to be really careful because Tiffany, I never knew in Disney they had this smart house. But if you really think about it, if you have a bunch of things that have the ability to lock you down, controlling, and you think you're in control, that is very ignorant of us to think that, oh, I'm going to just tell it, Alexa has a damn virus, a Trojan horse that says, F you, I'm locking you down. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? So that, given that control and thinking, oh, they do whatever I say, it's very naive of us sometimes, I think.
I agree wholeheartedly. That's the point, right? It's trust, trust in people, trust in the system. But I think though, one of the things I can learn and continue to learn is, to be guarded with your trust. You have to have discernment, right? And discernment is really important to understand, to be able to analyze and see, what is in the best interest truly for you, and not, like you said, Andy, just trusting corporations or people blindly, right? Blind faith, as they say. And even, people talk a lot about blind faith from a religious perspective, but it also tells you to test the spirits, test the people. And far too often we forget to do that, So at the end of the day, I do agree with you. You have to test the spirits, test what the meaning is behind the technology and the people who are providing it for you, and see it for what it is.
All right. Well, listen, man, this is closing thoughts. We're going to go around the horn and everyone can kind of, let's leave some jewels for folks. This is, again, the Tiffany factor. She wants us to make sure we don't just think it, we do it. We tell people, we give them some tools and solutions. So we'll start with you, Tiffany. Some take-home points that could help us feel positive about the AI revolution and not be scared.
For me, I would say that within this topic, something that I'm always reminded of, especially every now and then, is that the true beauty and authenticity of this life that we're given is within the face of a stranger, or even within a caterpillar making its way across a sidewalk. That's the true beauty and the true authenticity of this life that we've been given the privilege to live. And I think that it all goes back to what we were saying as well of, yes, these things are coming, but we can turn away from it, or we can blindly follow it, or we can sit down with it and we could try to understand it. We can try to figure out its place within our life, within our family, and within our future as well, because that's something that we have control over. We need to focus on the areas of life that we have control over. And I think that really and truly it depends on how we choose to navigate the development as well as the deployment of these technologies that are coming about.
Well said. I'm going to say for our generation, Paul, and I'm going to let you have the last word here, but for our generation, I think we have to embrace that the only thing that's constant is change. I think our generation have been kicking and screaming every step of the way with technology and advancement in technology. And I think, I'm talking the baby boomers, and right after that, we got to embrace that it's here and it's here to stay. And then how can we make the positive, how can we figure out how to make this something that we can learn and we can share, because our lens is keeping society on a positive path. So I do think we have to have a responsibility in our generation to drill down on it and learn it, right, Paul? Because I think sometimes we feel like we are at school, we don't want to learn anymore. And because so much is coming at us, we don't keep up. It's not really that complex. We've learned much more complex things than some of this technology, whether it's social media, whatever. And I'm going to charge myself. I think I have to take more responsibility to at least understand it more, so I can use what I'm about, empowering people with it and giving them right information about it, as opposed to just letting it hit us and we have no one really opposing the implementation or the application, and we don't know how to solve these problems. So I think for me, just from listening to this conversation, the topic has forced me to go back and understand a little more about what's really going on with AI and be more aware of how we can use it for the better.
Yeah, I'll leave it this. There's a statement that's going around now. It says that people are so worried about losing their job and stuff, right? So they're saying that AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI will, right? And that's the statement that we have to remember, that in any technology, AI is not new. It's just the newest term of the latest technology being used. AI has kind of always been here, right? Now that's a short form misnomer, but at the same point in time, we do have to understand, like you said, Andy, certain generations must embrace certain things in order to keep abreast with the changes happening. But we must also think outside the box to see how we can best use these tools for us. The safeguards for society are those who actually resist. Resistance against what people would have you believe has always been a human trait. People have resisted things that they don't think is for the betterment of all. Although we are where we are, people have resisted things along the way. Without that resistance, people might just been rolled over and steamrolled into things, right? There's been resistance towards things to make it better. Not that somebody doesn't have a concept that's not for the betterment of all of us or not necessarily good, but the whole idea is that resisting that and adding the things you want to see into the technology changes is so important. So that's why I was saying earlier on, it's important to see the crowdsourcing, the open source, the democratization, the involvement of many voices towards where this thing is going. That's so important. It can't be left in the hands of a few corporations or a few people to only benefit. It must be shared so that people can benefit. And for the areas that we know are still shortcomings and downfalls, the people will resist and will create those different ways and be able to use the technology in a positive manner. But left to a corporation whereby it comes about money or about pushing the envelope forward, we can fall susceptible to a system or to a society that then controls us and tells us what to do. So, is humanity dwindling? Is humanity at the precipice and at the challenge of technology and AI right now? I don't know. Only time will tell to answer that. But we all have a responsibility to make sure that it doesn't. That's the difference there. So if it does happen, we can only blame ourselves or the next generation of being too accepting and not having a healthy skepticism. It's the idea of the 99% versus the 1%, and the 99 must keep the 1% in check and also keep that 1% in such a way that they cannot take over. We know from many different theories and conspiracies, also projected futures, and also from prophecy around religious beliefs. We're marching towards those kinds of outcomes. However, it is up to us to make sure that those outcomes don't necessarily become a reality.
Yeah, well, folks, that's the end of our Tie-Dye Talks, AI versus Humanity. And Paul just left me with a new life lessons is our themes, right? Our overarching theme in Tie-Dye Talks is life lessons. And I just realized, Paul, that we are part of the decentralization of control movement. We're going to find a way to say, stop letting everything be centralized by the big corporate giants and find ways to distribute that into society. And that's the solution to everything. Because once we have centralization, we have control. Even though the 99% is more than the 1% control the wealth. And those who have the gold typically rules. And that's the problem. The wealth disparity is what creates the decisions. And yeah, that's another conversation in itself. But thank you guys. I think, I thoroughly enjoyed it again. And yeah, take
I like
us.
that topic, Andy. We're gonna have to pick that up in future. What do you call it? Decentralization movement?
Decentralization of control.
Yeah,
The decentralization of control. That just popped out as to what I think that's what we are all about here. This group here really is about advocating for humanity, and the advocating is decentralization of control because everything is centralized. The monetary system is centralized. Blockchain has kind of created a disruption there. And social media is centralized. Web3 is decentralizing that. So it's the decentralization of control that gives us this chance to have a voice, to have a way forward, and not have the few control everything. And then if their intent is not good, we're in trouble.
So if you want to hear about it, you're gonna have to come back. We're not saying when, maybe next week, maybe the week after, maybe the week after. You gotta stay tuned, right? Tune in to Tie-Dye Talks, decentralization of control, coming soon to a Tie-Dye Talks near you. All right.